Hi, everyone. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance, and this is Spotlight Now. Today, I'm with Claire McFadyen. Claire is the co-owner and operator of a natural burial, New Mexico, and La Puerta Natural Burial Ground since 2022 with her partner, Brian Beard. They took over from the original founders, Dr. Donal Key and Linda Canyon. Brian has a degree in industrial design and has a passion for creating things and spaces that invoke meaning. Claire has a degree in anthropology and ecology and evolutionary biology, as well as a master's degree in environmental public health, and has a deep fascination with the natural world. Claire continues to maintain, for now, a full-time position as a senior clinical research associate, while Brian is a full-time operator of the burial ground. So welcome, Claire.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And Brian
Very
would
well.
have been here, but he's, as the business goes, you never know what the day is going to bring. So he's at the burial ground today.
Absolutely. As duty calls, you never know where you're going to find me either. Believe me, you just
Yep.
never. So, I know a little bit about your property. I knew the former owners. I'm glad to hear that you guys are the new stewards of the property. So, why don't we get started by learning a little bit more about La Puerta Natural Burial Ground, how it came to be, and what
Yeah.
inspired its creation, and how did you get involved?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned in our introduction, Dr. Donal Key and Linda Canyon were the original founders of La Puerta Natural Burial Ground. So they started the burial ground back in 2016. They had their first burial in 2017. They both had long careers in end of life, just various roles in end of life careers. So Donald worked in hospice. He was in the administrative and leadership role in hospice care, and Linda had worked in hospice as a nurse. So they had seen what happens, after someone passes and the stress that it can cause, and just it wasn't a pleasant process for people. And they really saw a need for something more affordable and something that allowed people to do something that was environmentally sustainable. They understand the huge environmental costs that cremation and conventional burials have. And so they wanted to have another option for New Mexicans. So that's why they started La Puerta. And they ran La Puerta by themselves for about 5 years. So they were doing all of the burials themselves, and this was a retirement project for them. They were already retired. And so they were ready to finally retire fully. And so they were looking for some people to take over the burial ground and continue their mission to provide compassionate burial services that are gentle to the earth. So Brian and I actually had known Donal and Linda for a number of years. We're really good friends with their daughter. And so we, through their daughter, had learned about La Puerta and what they were doing, and we thought it was really a beautiful idea. And so we kind of followed them through their journey as they were going through it and showed interest. And so when the time came, they asked us if we were willing to take over. So we were both actually living in Colorado at that time. So Brian and I are married. We were living in Colorado at the time, and Brian was looking for a change in his career. And we were kind of at a point in our lives where we were ready to jump into something a little bit more meaningful. And so we took the opportunity and we decided to move to New Mexico and carry on the mission of La Puerta. So yeah, and that
Well,
was
that's a beautiful. That's a
2022.
beautiful story. Your story is very similar to so many people within our movement. The majority of us were not in the death care industry.
Yeah.
We kind of fell in love with the concept and with helping people. So, it sounds like it was meant to be, which is really wonderful. And New Mexico is a beautiful state for anyone who hasn't been there, to go and experience that. I'm sure La Puerta is absolutely beautiful. So with that being said, Could you paint a picture for our audience of La Puerta and how big the property is and how it's designed? What would they expect if they were to come and visit?
Yeah, so La Puerta is located at the base of the Manzano Mountains. So it's the ecology is high desert prairie. The vista is beautiful. It's, 360-degree, just open space, with the Manzano Mountains kind of framing the background. Lots of, native grasses, yucca, cacti. Those are the native plants that you'll see there. We own, actually, as of yesterday, essentially, we own 124 acres in that area. We just purchased an additional 40 acres recently. So a total of 124 acres, 40 acres have been registered with the county as a cemetery. So those 40 acres are dedicated for the natural burial ground. The other additional 80 we might add on to that as well in the future, but we're kind of holding on to those additional 80 as a reserve, and potentially do other types of conservation work, or we're not sure quite yet, but yeah, so it's a big open space. A lot of there's a lot of natural burial grounds that have lots of big trees and, lots of green, lush. We are a desert. And so that's what you're going to see. And um, it's a beautiful space in its own way. You go out there in the evening or in the morning and the sunsets are just incredible. Like nothing you'll ever seen. It's beautiful. And yeah, so we have a number of different sections of the burial ground. We only open 1 acre at a time to try to minimize the impact on the land. So right now we currently have 1 acre open for the general section. We also have a consecrated Jewish section and a consecrated Catholic section. And then we also have a family section. So if people want to have family plots, we'll allow them to pick out however many plots they want to secure. So yeah, open 1 acre at a time right now. Most of the land is just as it is, as it has been with the grasslands and the prairie. Every time we do a burial, we restore the ground with native grass seeds, so that we try to get that native grass back to help with erosion and dust control, and um, kind of restore the land back to the native natural ecosystem that it was before. We also encourage families to plant native plants. So we have a lot of people who have planted yucca, which do amazing out there, and they have beautiful flowers that are very pollinator friendly. We have had a few people plant desert willows out there, which are beautiful. Again, very pollinator friendly. They have these beautiful flowers in the spring and summer, that look like orchid flowers almost. So we have a number of those and a lot of, cactus, claret cup cactus, and prickly pear, and yeah. So
It it sounds beautiful. I mean, for those who have never been to the high desert, they really don't know what they're missing. I
yeah,
mean, what's interesting is, like you said, like 40 acres of forest looks very different than 40 acres of high desert, because you can see an endless expanse when you're in the desert. Of
yeah,
course, broken up by mountains. But it sounds gorgeous, and it's a great way. The way you guys are sustainably doing it. You know, Ironically, people don't realize what a passive use a burial ground really is. So to try to get willy nilly, and start putting people everywhere within 40 acres would be insane. So I think you guys have a good plan, to keep a good eye on the residents of your cemetery. And
right.
when your families come to La Puerta, what should they expect from the experience? Do you allow them to be a large part? Could you walk us through that?
Absolutely, yeah. So that is a huge part of the process, is the participation. We really believe in giving autonomy to the families, to the loved ones, to lay their loved one to rest in the way that is most meaningful to them. So we are really there as guides. We just kind of help them with each step, the logistics of a burial. So Brian will prepare the grave, so we will always open the grave. We don't have families open the grave themselves. We do use an excavator to open graves, and so we'll have it prepared, and we will always have um, some wood chips at the bottom of the grave just to kind of help with it'll look a little bit nicer and also help with the decomposition process to add a little bit more carbon to the process. Our soil is very sandy and very dry, so just add a little bit more organic material to help with that. So we'll have the grave prepared for the family. They will either a funeral home will arrive, or sometimes we'll transport to the gravesite to the burial ground on behalf of the family, um, either from a funeral home or if they're doing a home funeral. So we will allow the family to do whatever they want, essentially. If they want to have a celebration, we have a big pole barn that provides some shade down there. So that's a large space for people to gather under if they want to do a celebration under there. We also have a gazebo, a smaller gazebo, if they want to have a little bit more intimate gathering under the gazebo. Or sometimes people will have services just by the graveside. And each step of the process, the people who love that person are involved. Of course, it's their choice. If they're not comfortable, we will always step in and help them through that process. But what we found is even if people are a little bit hesitant at first, once we kind of get going with the process, they are they have a very positive experience by playing an active role in that process of laying their loved one to rest. So they will help us place their loved one on. We have a final ride cart, which is like an old horse carriage type of thing that we can pull by hand. So we'll place the person, the deceased, on the cart, and sometimes people will place flowers on them, or notes or whatever they want, and then they'll carry their person to the side of the grave. And then from there, we will kind of take cues from the family of when they're ready for the next step. Once they're ready, we'll put ropes on the handles of the container, and we will have, if there's enough people from the family to help with the lowering process, then they will all do it, and we'll just instruct them, or we'll play a part as well. We'll be pallbearers as well, but everything's by hand. We will lower by hand into the grave. And then sometimes people choose to close the grave by hand as well. That's totally up to the family and what they want. Or, sometimes they'll just put a few scoops of dirt into the grave for the first initial earth, and then let us do the rest. But yeah, we let the families take the lead and do whatever they need in the moment.
That's beautiful, and that's the way it should be, an interactive experience, a real memorable experience when you're, basically sending someone off with the final, celebration of a life that was lived. So it sounds lovely. Uh, how has your community embraced, and what is has the local interest in eco-friendly funerals risen, or what have you seen in your area?
Yeah, I think people are hungry for an alternative. We've done a lot of outreach. Most of our advertising is through education. So we do a lot of talks. We go to a lot of events and have a table. And I would say 99% of the people who we interact with are like, wow, this is great. This is a wonderful option to have. It's funny though, because natural burial is kind of presented as a new concept when it's really not a new concept at all. We've been doing that, humans have been doing natural burial since culture has been around, and there's many communities who have never stopped doing natural burial. And here in New Mexico, we actually have many communities who that's what they do is natural burial, and they've never stopped. So for a lot of people, it's like, well, yeah, that's how you bury somebody. But for some people, it's kind of a new concept, which is interesting. So
No, absolutely. I mean, certainly we did not invent this. It's been around since the dawn of time. I think in American culture, people like to believe that sometimes they're the leaders or the people who created something, and it's great to steward something. But you're correct;
Mhm.
it's as ancient as time itself. Uh, does La Puerta offer any other types of options? Let's say for cremation. Let's say someone had some cremains of a loved one who maybe would have appreciated La Puerta but didn't live to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have urn plots, so we do allow people to enter cremains. And either, through an urn plot, or we also have people, sometimes people want to have cremains laid to rest with someone who passed, maybe a partner that had passed before. So we will absolutely allow that to happen if people request it. The urn plots are about half the size of the full plots, and it's kind of the same thing. People can have a ceremony if they wish. The urns have to be biodegradable, obviously, or just cremains directly into the earth. We do try to add a little bit, because I know a lot of people don't realize, but cremains are very alkaline.
Correct.
And um, our soils here in New Mexico are already very alkaline. And so we don't want to add too much to the soil. It might impact plant life. So we try to add a little bit of compost in there to help neutralize it a little bit. Or if it's already in like a biodegradable urn, that also helps with that too. So we don't do scattering, and that is due to the alkaline nature of cremains. If we do too much of that, we already have kind of a fragile ecosystem out there, and we don't want to impact that too much. So but the interment of cremains is absolutely an option for people at La Puerta.
Well, that's great, and it's good that you guys are good stewards. A lot of people don't realize that how the alkalinity of cremains themselves. So it's something that people should understand, and you're treating it as such, which is great. Uh, I know you guys are new to it, but not really new to it. So, I mean, what is one of the most memorable experiences at La Puerta been for you? Has there been a particular service or moment that really stuck with you since you've started this journey?
Yeah, and for me personally, I've only been able to participate in a handful of burials. I think I've maybe done maybe 10 or so. Brian's, the full-time cemeterian, I guess. And so he's had a lot more experiences than I have. But I feel like each burial that I've participated in has been very special and very unique. I think when you provide people the opportunity to do what they or the permission to just do what they need, they can come up with some really beautiful and creative ideas. We've had a burial where they had like a tamale party after, where the person who had passed was famous for her tamales that she made. So they had a bunch of tamales and they had a picnic afterwards. We had one person or one family do a really beautiful service with lots of notes and flowers, and then the person who had passed was a big gardener, so they planted a bunch of native plants after the service as part of the service. So they created a garden for their person, and we have a lot of artists, and we had one artist who she had folded, I think it was like 2,000 paper cranes while she was on hospice, and
Wow.
people placed all 2,000 paper cranes in the grave with her, as part of remembering her and remembering her artistry. So yeah, I think there's a lot of, I think each one, you kind of, it's interesting because you kind of get to know a person in a way that you've never really met, but through the people who are celebrating them. And it's a really special thing to witness for sure.
Absolutely, the intimacy of it. It's almost like you're part of their family. And
Yeah.
over the years, I've explained to people different services, and they say, "How can you possibly remember days or names?" Or, but it's very easy because they're so memorable. So,
Yeah.
sounds beautiful. The paper cranes, that must have been really a sight to see. That's
Yeah.
for sure. So, as we're coming to the end of our interview, we always have a fun question we like to ask. So, where do you envision La Puerta Natural Burial Ground? Let's say in 5 or 10 years, where would you like to see it? And sounds like you already have a big property, but do you have any plans of expansion, either at that ground, or at those grounds, or maybe in different locations?
Yeah, we would love to expand to different locations. I think just having the option for people is really important. Right now, so New Mexico has a ton of different family plots. It's an interesting place to, as far as cemeteries go. We have lots of little cemeteries. Every town has a little cemetery, but those are kind of reserved for certain people who are part of that community or part of a church. Um, and I think it's really important to provide this option for New Mexicans all over the state. And so it would be, that is definitely something that we would love to do, is have properties in different parts of the state so that people can have that option close by. That's one big thing that is hard for some people because they love La Puerta and they love the idea of it, but it's a 3-hour drive from Santa Fe to get there. So it's hard to visit your person, if it's a 3-hour drive. So yeah, I think that's a huge part of what we would love to see with this project. And also just facilitating community space. I think getting people, giving people more um, excuses to be in nature and to be part of it and to be stewards of that land, and encouraging kind of a culture around that. I think that's kind of where we see ourselves in.
That's great. I mean, I can relate to that. It is true. People will travel, but every community could have a La Puerta. That's what's
Mhm.
really interesting about what we do, and I think people are starting to realize that. So, you know, we at the Global Green Burial Alliance really appreciate what you and Brian do, Claire. It's really important. Anyone in the New Mexico area, go visit La Puerta. It sounds like a beautiful place to go and spend part of your day and see the high desert. Thanks for joining us. Our viewers can learn more by visiting naturalburialnewmexico.com. And we look forward to seeing you again, Claire, in the future.